evening. So thank you for joining us and welcome to Skizeni. Generation Z is speaking to us today, and we just want to hear what they have to say. So I'm part of the Generation Z, and as we all know, we're all going through this whole period of the pandemic, and so I have been coping by doing what Generation Z knows how to do best, as many people say. I've been on social media, keeping up with the news through the media because that's definitely the quickest and most efficient way to keep up with the news, both local news and international news, as most of you would have been keeping up with as well. And yes, that's what I've been up to. That's how I've been coping because of their assurance that things sometimes they look better, even though they may look worse in terms of the numbers of cases. But things seem to have started opening up, and yeah, so that's how I've been coping. I've been engaging with a lot of the things that have been happening on the in the media, and it's been nice to see a lot of Generation Z speak up and be at the forefront of a lot of things. So that has been my period of the quarantine time. And so we have four panelists with us, and I'm going to introduce them and then I'll let them introduce themselves as well, just briefly. They will be sharing their experiences and how they've been coping and what they've been doing and how they are a part of Generation Z. So first we have Tyler, Andy, Jeremy, and Nora, and I'm just going to let them introduce themselves, starting with Tyler. So yeah, go ahead.
Hey, so yeah, my name is Tyler, and how have I been coping? I feel like that's such an easy but difficult question because like it changes depending on the weeks. Like there's not been a specific way that I've managed to like get through the quarantine period. It just depends on where I'm at, how I'm feeling, what type of things I need to do. So I'm a student at the Kenya School of Law. So at the start, I was trying to read, trying to keep up with school, but then that just got difficult, especially since there was no prospect of like when anything is gonna start up again. So in contrast to you, Tamara, I've actually been trying to get off social media and trying to like not watch news as much because I felt like it was too loud, you know, like you just sit at home and like every day, there's just something to be said. And it was just a bit overwhelming for me. So I've been trying to like get off it and just spend time like trying to see what other things that I have to do. So some of the things I've been doing is obviously, I'm pretty sure everyone on Insta and everything has been like cooking, baking, finding new recipes. So I've been doing some of that. I started just trying to learn new skills. So I started learning to play guitar. I started painting, just doing like other things which I didn't get a chance to do when I was in school. But more recently, I've kind of like tried to think about what my life will be after quarantine and not just go with the flow, you know. So use the time to set down some goals, set down some visions, and see what I can do right now to make those things happen, even though, you know, we're all at home. So that's kind of how I've been coping. It looks different every week. How I'm part of Generation Z. Um, I guess other than just like my age, it's almost like this in between period where like you're done with school or like you're in school and you're not in like a full-time job yet. So people don't really necessarily what I'm trying to explain is how I relate to the topic. People don't really necessarily want to hear what you have to say all the time because you don't have clout. There's nothing to tie, you know, you can't be like, my name is this and I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a this, you know. So that's kind of how I relate to the topic because it seems like sometimes it's really hard to get people to just hear what you have to say without you having to prove yourself. So yeah.
Thank you, Tyler. That was really nice. And genuinely, I do agree with that in terms of cooking and everything. I have been baking up a storm. I can tell you, my household every single time, every week, if not every multiple times a week, they know I'm baking and I'm doing things like that. So yes, it's nice, and everybody has different ways to cope. So we can continue on with Andy. He can tell us what he's been up to and if he also has any new goals and yeah, what he's been doing.
So, hi, my name is Andy. As you've heard from Tamara, I think everyone has been cooking. Even men themselves have been cooking and baking. I've been exploring new things that I've been done, art, music, even reading novels, which I think I'm not a good bookworm, but I've been trying. uh, One thing that I've learned this time of Corona is that it's time for one to achieve what he thinks is best for himself. Because most of the times where how the world is today, or you have to be in class today, you have to be in school today, you have to go shopping with your parents or something like so. But it's time to achieve what you want as a person, and that's what one thing Corona has taught me, that it's now about your life, to plan out, to think about yourself. That is, one thing about Generation Z is that it's an age bracket that gives us an opportunity to learn more about ourselves and also the community that we are in. And that's one of the major things that that's on this platform. Yeah.
Thank you. And I definitely agree with that also in terms of learning with yourself, learning about yourself and learning more about the community around you. And yeah, so as we continue to learn, let's go on to Jeremy. And then after that, Nora will just go straight after him.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Kalafa. And so what I've been doing during this quarantine time is just we've been doing some online videos for kids, workout videos and such kinds of stuff. Just to be able to keep healthy, to stay healthy. Yeah, what else I've been doing is I've been working on content development. We do a lot of life skills building for kids, a lot of trainings for young kids, young adults, and such kinds of stuff. So it's given me an opportunity to really, because a lot of things have slowed down, a lot of the trainings and stuff like that have slowed down. So I've been able to work on some content development and stuff like that, trying to get a lot of the things that were on my mind down on paper and just typing it up. And yeah, also doing some online classes here and there, just trying to get some new skills, because I think it's a good thing, because a lot of things have slowed down. So what you are postponing, saying I'll do this next year and I'll do this next year, so I've been able to do a lot of that, and I'm really grateful for that. So some of the things I'm really grateful for, I've been able to be building myself up during this time, and I'm seeing a lot of good change and a lot of good progress on that. And so in terms of the topic today, yeah, I think what really relates with me is about social change, because that's where I'm at. Currently, I run an organization called Pneumatica Coaching Services that works on teaching and training kids with life skills that will help equip them for life. So the whole aspect of being there to see something change the society, see a life change, see someone become better than they were before. That's one of the key things that really excites me about the topic today. Yeah.
Okay, I believe that's me. Hello, everyone. My name is Nora Moiti. I'm an ELF alumna that is in cohort 8, and I recently graduated virtually from Dedan Kimathi University, where I pursued Bachelor of Commerce, Finance option. And about the pandemic, when 2020 was starting, clearly, and when I was writing down my vision board, graduating virtually was nowhere near my goals. And it was frustrating, trust me, because I believe half of the time in university, your motivation to actually study hard is because you really want to wear that cap and gown, graduate with pomp and color, and have a picture to show for the 4 years. But drastic measures were taken, so we had to graduate virtually. And I've had to come to peace with that fact. Actually, I was joking that if I knew ELF graduation would be the last physical graduation I would attend, I would have actually gone a little bit extra on that day. What I've done during the pandemic, now that I've graduated, it's much of coming to reality on you really have to relearn. I've been reading a lot of statistics on how much the job market is not ready for us, the Gen Zs and other young people. So I've been really doing a lot about how am I prepared for the job market. I've also been reading a lot of novels, as Andy stated, I've been reading a lot of novels. And moving back home after so many years of studying, what the pandemic has helped me with is having to relearn your parents again, because we are always far studying. So actually staying at home for 6 months, there are so many things I've learned about my family members that I'm in shock and in awe, and I believe they're also learning about me. What I would say about this generation Z, as we have been called, it's a time of learning and a time of actually making mistakes and being proud of making mistakes and learning from them. Because one thing that the pandemic has actually taught me is that control is an illusion of life. You can never have complete control, but you can actually influence your actions to become a better person. So Generation Z is a place where we are actually learning about ourselves, learning about the community, and trying to actually become better people in the society.
I love that. I love to hear everybody's experiences during Corona, because as many of us may be blessed to not be lacking and not being affected by the pandemic so personally, it's also nice, just before we start, as Generation Z here, to also recognize that there's people out there who are very, very greatly affected. As you may know, there's the evictions happening, there was the landslide, there's been lots of people. And can I tell you one thing I've noticed during this period is a lot of moving trucks. So because people don't have so much money, is that they have to move out of even their places and go to somewhere else where they can afford, because they're not they're not able to pay rent and things like that. So I think that's something that we should be able to appreciate, the fact that we have had the opportunity to learn such things and learn how much, as you said, how much control we actually have. And there's some things out there that may be out of our control, but I love the fact that we're all learning. And one big thing about Generation Z that everybody talks about is that, on the positive side, is that we're very limitless. We have limitless opportunities. The online platforms that have really grown and expanded over the years have made it possible for us to be quite limitless. As I'll say again, we are able to start a business here and have it even reach like across the continent. You know what I mean? Which is not something that many generations prior to us would have really enjoyed on a larger scale. So we're going to take a break, a very, very short break, just before we go live, and so we can allow people to even send in questions and comments. And yes, we'll be back after a very short break. Sorry, I apologize. Sorry for that interruption. There's slight technological issues, and it's getting hard to connect on Facebook. But I will start the conversation and ask you guys, in the way that we are portrayed to be quite limitless, right? With all these numerous opportunities and things, such things like that, right? Are there ways in which you feel limited on the other end of the scale, right? Because there's that end of the scale where we are quite limitless. Our voices are, so to speak, in some parts of the world, much louder than previous generations, and we are creating and making lots of impact. As you've seen here, we also have a sports mentor, by the way, and things like that. Like, we would be seen to be quite limitless. But of course, there's the other side of the coin to that discussion. So do you guys feel, as a panelist, does any one of you feel you're limited in any way, and by who actually? Would it be parents? Would it be pressure from people? Would it even be yourself, you know? So I just want to see your views on that. And this time we can start with Andy.
I think one of the greatest thing that will affect us towards what we want to achieve is ourselves, because most of the times we are occupied in other people's failures, and I see that most of the times you try and compare. I was trying to ask myself if sometimes comparison is the greatest, is one of the forms of not achieving your goals, because we tend to see what people have than what you can do to reach what you want. And at the end of it, I think the greatest person who will limit your achievement is yourself. Yeah.
That's a nice way to look at it, like a very, you know, one of those truths that you don't want to hear, but you need to, because sometimes I'm always told that you can always, things can happen, right? But it's always your reaction. And just like Andy has mentioned, it's really a lot about how you really take things in. And yeah, that's a good way to think about things. What does Tyler think about that? And then after that, we can just have Nora and then Jeremy to also share about how they feel limited and by who.
That's a really good question, Tamara. I don't have a straight answer to it because I can see both sides of it. I would never have said of myself, or that I would never have thought that our generation is like limitless, even though, as you explained it, it made absolute sense. Um, Kind of like adding on from what Andy said, I feel like potential is great, and it's such a good thing to see that, like, for me personally, like, I really like seeing that. I don't want to say I could do anything, but there's so many options out there, you know, like with social media and like the internet. You get to see the different types of things people do with their lives, which can be really inspiring. You know, you don't just have to be like one thing in life. You can do more than one thing, which I think has kind of come out through just even us introducing ourselves. But I think sometimes like potential, it can be great, but it can also mean that, like, if I, speaking for myself, like when I think to myself, oh my gosh, I could do this and this and this, sometimes it means that I don't actually settle down and do one thing because I'm just kind of like everywhere, you know? So I guess I would say my answer would be like our generation, and maybe myself as well. Like I'm limitless in the sense that, like, I could potentially do something, you know, like if I wanted to start any business, like selling cards, like I could, you know, and I don't want to say it wouldn't be difficult, but it would definitely be easier than someone who's trying to do this like in my parents' generation, right? But I would say that it can, like, I am limited in the sense that, like where am I getting the money to do any of these things? You know what I mean? Like, it's all this potential is great, but like at the end of the day, I'd still have to like focus down and do the one thing, because we don't necessarily have like, well, I don't necessarily have, or I can't go to an institute to just get funding to do like start a card business. You know what I mean? So I think like the potential is definitely out there, and being able to connect with people from all over the world can seem like it's like we're limitless, but at the end of the day, like we need people to fund it. We need kind of like people to back us up and to help us in the businesses or whatever it may be, the endeavors. So I think that's the point at which it becomes limited. Like you're free to dream, but like, are you actually going to put the thing into practice? Yeah.
On the same question on what's limiting me and why, I really want to blame a lot of things, especially external factors, because I totally agree with Andy that potential lies in everyone, and it's only one that can limit their own execution and implementation of the idea. However, speaking as a Generation Z, I would say most of us are actually limited by, we really have the ideas in our minds, we really see the bigger picture, but most of us do not know how to conceptualize the idea, to actualize the idea. And that has really limited most people. So it dies in our minds like an idea. Also, as Tyler stated, the funding and the support from either family members or from external forces such as the government. Mostly it could be, especially the family members, Generation Z is coming up with ideas that are really looking crazy to the other person. Something that when you go and tell your parents, they think that you're either out of your mind or it's not something they totally support. So that brings on to my third point, that we are actually limited by society constructs. People still believe that a 9 to 5 job is what you should do immediately after you get out of school. You should go straight to internships, gain experience. So society really has tried to put us in the box that they themselves have been. But at the end of it all goes down to the individual person, the will and the zeal to really achieve what you really want. So I would say yes, individually people limit themselves, but also external factors, society construct, support from the older generation, it all ties down. Yes.
Yeah. So I think for myself, what I've come to see about what really limits me, especially in what we're doing with sports and kids and life skills and mentorship, is a lot of it has to do with fear. Because I've gone through the whole aspect of trying to convince people this idea works and all such kinds of things, but I think the greatest hurdle was myself. Wondering questions in your mind: will this really work? Is this actually viable? Is this going to be able to do something? Looking at other people and what they're doing and being afraid and wondering, will I ever get there, or will I be able to make it? And what if I make it? What if I make it and I fail? What if I be the best that I can be and then I mess up? Such kinds of fears, and I've come to see that the greatest limiting factor for me personally is fear. And it really hinders a lot of opportunities that and actually it even clusters my mind, whereby you're not even able to see opportunities because you're like, apana, this one can never work. It can never really work. It seems as if everything is against me for this to work. So you actually join the instigators in being against yourself when it comes to that. So that's what I've come to see in my own life about when it comes to what really limits me is fear, and I'm still just working on overcoming it. So I do a lot of things afraid. I'm like, I'm feeling afraid, but I'm like, I have to try this because I see the impact it can do. So for me, I'm kind to see that fear is personally one of my greatest limiters. Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys for answering that. I just want to, I shortly want to interrupt and say that we are not going to be live on Facebook, but it will be shared later. So sorry for the technological difficulties, but yeah, we can still continue the discussion and everything. And let's just keep this flowing. And so following from that, that point of being feeling quite limited by yourself, by own self, by fear and all of that. And I definitely relate to fear. Up until probably like a year ago, I think I was the most anxious person. I don't think I'd be able to even do something like this and sit with people and discuss just about my generation. Something like that before was absolutely absurd and out of the waters for me. It was something that I thought to myself, wow, I'm too scared to do that. So yes, it's nice to know that people can relate to that. And even whoever's out there watching and like, yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I limit myself a lot. But yeah, so in turn, how have those limitations then in turn affected your view of things and your positioning in Generation Z? And obviously this means your view on things in the world, socially, politically, and all of the things that go on around us. Those limitations, how do they affect your perspective on such things? So we can start again and continue from Jeremy, and then after that we'll go to Nora and Andy, then Tyler. Thanks.
So I think one of the ways that that has affected me, my perspective on things, especially to do with fear, is it's because the whole perspective then becomes, I have to be this great person. I have to be this amazing person. Like, let's say if I'm doing a business, I have to be the next, Steve Jobs or Bob Collymore, the next person, whose everything is out there and who has everything together. I think that's one of the key things that made my perspective on that, for me to be able to do anything, all of my stuff has to be together before I even start. And that's really affected a lot of the things that I would do, because I would feel like now if I'm doing this, maybe I'm being a phony, maybe I'm being a fake, I don't have it as well put together as I see everyone else has it. And so one of the key things that's really affected my perspective, but I've come to understand, and especially as you go along and as you do a lot of things, as you try out new things, is that it's okay. It's okay to just be where you are, to start where you are. You don't have to have everything together at the beginning. You can just keep on walking step by step by faith. And as you keep on walking, as you keep on trying, as you keep on testing, usually doors keep on opening up. You get the confidence step by step to just keep on going. And you also get to demystify the whole fact that, it's not about the image that's portrayed, but about the impact that you're making, because if personally for me, if one child gets impacted by what we're doing, like let's say in terms of mentorship, and their life changes, man, that's amazing. It's not necessarily I have to be seen on CNN or some big news station, but by the fact that one life was changed, man, that gives me strength to just keep on doing. And you'd never be able to get to that point if you never started. So that's one of the key things I've been able to see, that as I start, maybe a life is changed. That gives you more motivation to just keep on going on. And yeah.
So, well spoken, Jeremy. I feel like we should conclude this whole question. Very well put. How I phrase what has limited me, especially on conceptualizing the ideas, because I've realized most of the time I have these big ideas in my mind, they're clashing with each other. I have two diverse dreams in my mind. I have written them down and I really don't know. So I want to be one day a financial literacy consultant. What happens after today? And as Jeremy put it, I would say also fear plays a big role in my life, because then there's that fear, and especially there's the fear of actually conceptualizing. Maybe it's the fact that when you conceptualize, you're really now starting on the whole idea. So what I've really learned to do all through is talking to somebody who has been there. Maybe a mentor, maybe just someone older than me, someone who has already been there. And what I came to realize, it's not actually because I need their input, but mostly when I'm speaking out, I'm speaking aloud a goal or a vision. Halfway, I'm always like, oh yeah, by the way, oh yes. I never thought of it that way. So actually, when I learned that when you're talking out loud about a goal, most of the time you actually get to see a wider view, a wider spectrum that you didn't view the goal at it. Also working with a mentor, someone who has been there before you, they will actually guide you. They can either coach you or they can either critique your dream, because those are two different things. Also, what I've learned through the process is it's okay to have mixed up goals as a Generation Z, and it's okay to want two things which are very, very different. For example, I want to be a financial literacy consultant expert. At the other point, I want to do NGO work, community based. Those are two, someone would say those are two different dreams. But what I've learned all through along is at the end of it all, somewhere, just start on the two of them, somewhere in between they'll tie to each other. You'll actually find something that links the two of them. And lastly, I would say it's finding support system. This might not be a mentor, this might not be a coach, it might not be a critique, but the people you keep around, having intentional social media following of something, of someone who has done what you've done, and having friends around you who actually motivate you has been something that has really helped me to go beyond just having a dream in my head, no matter how crazy it is.
One of the opportunities that I had, for me, it wasn't much, but due to my comparison, I learned that it made me to be slower in what I wanted to achieve. For me, let me give my example. In March, I had gotten a good job somewhere. I want to mention the name, but I'm being paid. The amount will be, let me say 500. 500 a day. I don't have transport. I don't have rent. I don't have food. It's something that I'll put into my saving. But due to my comparison towards my boss, this guy is doing big things. Will I ever be like him? This guy he's getting this amount. Will I get that amount? And with time, it really made me to go backwards to what I wanted to achieve. And I lost that opportunity. And from that, I learned that once you want something, you can actually get it. Because after that, I will go back then, I'll tell him, I want to do this and this, and he'll teach me how to do it and how to be better to it. So I think one of the things that us as Generation Z is that we should learn to get out of that box of where we are in. And at the end of it, we'll be like greater people at what you want to achieve. And that's one of the main things I'd seen towards myself in comparison. If you compare, you can compare to be like a role model, not to be a disadvantage towards you. And that's one of the greatest ways you can improve yourself as a young person at the moment.
So I'd say that the way that I've been impacted has actually been positive. Like I would draw on from what Jeremy and Nora said, like when I feel like I really just don't know what to do and I'm just not clear, I've learned to become good at saying when I'm not okay. So I think like feeling helpless has made me just say if I'm not okay, which has actually been to my benefit. And so like the first thing that like all these factors have impacted me is like I'm thinking of an idea or I'm just thinking like, okay, like what am I going to do with my life? What am I doing right now? What am I doing? Like someone like Jeremy, he has like, it sounds like he has like he can see like a direct impact in what he's doing. But someone like me, I feel like I've been in school for ages. So sometimes I don't always see that. So the first thing that I've learned to do as a Christian is to pray, and not like just, I want to pray, like not just pray like a surface level prayer and be like, okay, like what should I do, God? But like actually like find out like what God's word says about certain things. And that really gives me like reassurance to know that like, first of all, I'm not supposed to have it all planned out because that's not my job. You know, like God says he'll plan everything for me. And then the second thing that I've learned to do is talk to someone, like what Nora said, like I'm so grateful like that I could just run some ideas by my parents sometimes, or my brother, or like a friend, and be like, this is just what I'm thinking. And I won't say it like I want to do it, you know, but I'll just say like, this is just what I'm thinking, and hear what people have to say. And sometimes that just gives direction, and it's just so nice to know that someone else is with you on it. They're thinking through it with you. That's another thing that I've learned to do. But I'd say like, to summarize, and like the overall thing I've learned is that you just have to keep trying. Like kind of what Jeremy said, like fear should not be the thing that stops you. Because if it is, like you'll never do anything. I read I was reading a book yesterday that said that we should just try to be like proactive about our lives. We shouldn't go with the flow, even though many people say you should just go with the flow, but you'll miss a lot of opportunities, you'll miss a lot of chances to learn. And the book quoted this quote that said, like, only dead fish go with the flow, you know, like even fish are like constantly trying to get at where they're trying to go. So yeah, how it's impacted me is just when I can't do it, I say, and I've also just had to come to peace with myself that if I can't do something, that doesn't mean that I should stress about it. It's a conclusion in itself. Like, I can't do it now, it's okay. I tried my best, and that's all that matters. So yeah, I'd say that's how it's impacted me.
Okay, so I really like listening to all of that and how your views might have changed and developed over time and things like that because of limitations. And also limitations, I think, for a lot of people are a very big opportunity for growth, and I can see that. And unfortunately, not everybody sees that, and that's why we have so many misconceptions about Generation Z. I feel like just because they see that there are certain limitations put on us, or some people feel that there are quite a lot of pressures and limitations put on us, then they reach certain negative, sometimes even positive assumptions and conclusions. Some of them would be like, we're lazy, we're indecisive, we're quite entitled, and we only communicate on social media, and we don't actually know how to relate to people in real life and be social beings in outside of our screens. And those are just a couple of the misconceptions that I've heard or I've encountered in my life. So I would want to know, for you guys, have you guys heard what misconceptions are these that you guys have ever like encountered, and what misconceptions in particular do you feel need to be dispelled as of yesterday? Like, people need to stop saying it right this second, and it just needs to be dispelled, and people need to stop thinking that Gen Z is a certain way. And yeah, how personally for you have these misconceptions contributed to you being limited and feeling like you're left out or things like that? And yeah, let's just talk about these misconceptions and these assumptions that are out there about Generation Z. And we can start again with Tyler this time because she just finished beautifully for us, and then we can move on to Nora and then Andy, and following from that, Jeremy.
Okay, so I do agree with what you said. Like, I feel like there's definitely a lot of misconceptions. I can't even think about them all. But I'd say like one thing that I've noticed, I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or because in general, like I would be more quiet in a conversation. Like, I try to observe people before I say something. But one thing I've observed is like people do generally think that all we do is spend our time on phones, and like we're not contributing anything positive, but like I don't know that people ask themselves what we're doing, like when we're on our phones or on our laptops, because like with a lot of my friends and the conversations I have, like even if it looks like we're spending a whole day on Netflix, like what are people actually watching? Some people watching like documentaries or watching things that would like, they're actively going to find things that will grow them or challenge them, So like, it's not necessarily that we're kind of like reckless or we don't care, like it's just we're doing things in a way that is different from what some of the older people have done, So I'd say like that's the biggest misconception, and I would like to dispel it in the sense by like asking people to just think about what do you like, think further about this misconception. Don't just like term it as like they all just do this and then leave it there. Like, think about like what are people doing, and also just have conversations, because I think because of that misconception, people don't rate like what I might have to say or what someone our age might have to say. They're like, what do you know about life? You know what I mean? Like, all you do is spend your time at home or on Instagram or TikTok, but there's just a lot more on these platforms as opposed to just like the pictures, the cute videos, or whatever it may be. So yeah, that's one thing.
Oh, thank you for that question, Tamara. When you've just asked this, as I was thinking, I've realized it's a coin question. It has both sides. There's the side of the misconception that we have amongst ourselves as Generation Z, and there's the misconception that the older generation has towards us. What I mean, especially, allow me to start with the misconception that the older generation has about us. The first one is life. They think that life is too easy for us. Just because you didn't walk for 50 kilometers to school as they did, just because our parents were working and they could provide for us a three-course meal at home, they think, I don't know, they have the notion that life is too easy for us. What they do not understand is the higher you progress, the newer the problems that arise, the more challenges that we have as we come up. I mean, there's the whole concept of depression. You're trying to explain to an older person that you can actually be stressed because someone, I'm not saying people should be, that people have stress out of relationships. And they look at you and they're wondering, what if we went through what we went through during our life? So I really don't think life is easier for us just because we are born in 1990 something or 2000. Life comes with its own issues. The other misconception is they actually think I don't know, they think that we are rude. I don't know if it's true, but it's a misconception that is out there. You go to a place, to a job application, and someone says, hawa watoto wa siku hizi hata hawajui kusalimiana, hata hawajui mila zao, hata hawajui their traditions. What they fail to understand is no one actually took us through that tradition. No one actually sat us down and told us about that custom. So how am I supposed to behave if no one took me through it? And I believe there are a lot of misconceptions from the older generation towards us, including that we don't want to work, we don't want to work, yet we like using money. Yet there are many people actually who are trying really hard. All of us here have listened to people's dreams, and I can tell you there are people who actually are really hustling out there. But the older generation looks at you and they think, you just want easy money. And as Taylor said, I might be working in my phone, that's my hustle, and I work hard at it to build a social media brand. I work hard at being a social media maybe consultant or social media content creator. That's my hustle. But to an older generation, taking a djembe and actually doing the physical work is actually the definition of working hard at it. Now, what about the misconception that we have ourselves against each other? I believe the first one is likes equates to people liking you. That's a clear misconception. The more your picture maybe or something you post gets more liking, the more people love you. Or money is the equation for success. So that has made people to really, really try to get money, no matter the way, no matter how fast it comes, they just want money because that's the equation of success. And lastly, I would say life is too fast. You know, there's the coin of you only live once. I feel like it's a misconception. How about you only die once? I don't know. You only live once allows us to have this misconception that anytime you can die. How about you have fun? Anytime anything might happen, you might never equate to anything. How about you just have fun with whatever you have right now? So yeah, I believe there are many misconceptions out there. Some from the older generation, and others amongst ourselves. And sadly, I think the misconception amongst ourselves are more lethal. Yeah, thank you.
Towards my take is that one of the biggest misconception, this is more so towards the older generation, is that we are tech zombies. All you do is stay on phone. When you go out, you're on phone. When you're in the house, you're on phone. But actually, to be honest, the truth is that phones are now becoming the basis of our life. We get books on phone. We get knowledge through phone. We even communicate most of the times through our phones with people all around the world. So that's one of the biggest misconception I see towards our generation, is that they think that sometimes the technology that you have is like, let me say, a backdrop to your future. They have the thought that you're always on phone. What will it bring to you at the end of it all? And maybe that's where you're trading on your phone, and that's what you're learning on phone is what is going to be part of what you're going to do in future when you grow up.
Yeah, so I think I'd say for me there are the two main ways I've seen a lot of misconception. I think the first one is that we don't listen, that people of this age, of this category, they don't listen, they don't hear stuff, they are always busy on their earphones and their music and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the greatest misconceptions I've heard. And then secondly is also, I wouldn't say it's rather a misconception, but rather more or less a lot of generalization, whereby um, what happens is that for a lot of people, the whole age group is categorized into one, that so that removes the whole aspect of trying to know someone into you just be like that. So I'd say for me, one in the area of not listening is that I think that a lot of people are actually listening. A lot of people in this generation are actually listening to the cries of people, and that's why a lot of people are crying out. That's why we're seeing a lot of people out on social media speaking about vices, speaking about mental health, speaking about what things that are happening around. So I think that the people are listening. I think the whole aspect is now the way of people communicate about what they're listening is quite totally different. So in terms of, I think the old generations, they want people to speak in terms of talking to them, but I think for a lot of people, it's easier for us to communicate it and speak it on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, that actually this is something that is happening and we don't like it. And so now on the part of generalization, because I think this has now really also affected a lot of people, is on the sense of that this generation is just lazy. This generation is just like this. So it removes the whole aspect of someone trying to know you for who you are. And I think now for that one is just up to us as an individual to rise up. And I think that's one of the greatest and hardest hurdles, is that you have to rise up and speak out for yourself above and beyond. That you have to be like, like a lot of us have said a lot of different misconceptions, but so there's a whole sort of weight or load on you to be able to rise above what everyone else says about all the other people, because maybe like if I posting about saying a job interview, go for a job interview, they're like, so you have to rise up way above the standard of all the other people that perhaps people had interacted with. And I think, yeah, so this is some of the key things I've been able to see. Yeah.
I like those. I particularly just wanted to mention that I really, really liked the breaking the misconceptions into two categories. The fact that there are misconceptions that are surrounding us and are within us inside the generation itself, and that there are misconceptions from other generations and exterior misconceptions. So it's really nice that sometimes you'll start to step back and think, am I promoting some misconceptions amongst my own generation, and am I contributing to certain misconceptions? So I think it's also quite ironic that many of us have mentioned technology and that we are really tech zombies. That's a great misconception. It's quite ironic because older generations were rushing to get things moving online when the whole pandemic came about, and I think it really it was quite like a shock to many people, because it was like now they have to adapt to our way of living, so to speak, because we had been so used to being technologically advanced and on top of the game with most of these things. But then older generations, while criticizing us, are then now forced to also switch and make things really surrounded and solely focused on technology. So it's just a bit ironic that that's a great misconception about our generation when it really is now a tool for them. So I just wanted to follow up also on that and ask then, and discuss about how it's been mentioned that in the West and out there, most popularly, we see that the generations, as Jeremy mentioned, that we take what we see online and the way we address it is different. So while in Kenya we see a lot of Twitter and online speaking out, yes, out there in the West, I think we've seen that the generation Z, our generation, is at the forefront of most of this social change in terms of mental health awareness, rallies, and also most popularly the Black Lives Matter movement, which I'm sure so many people have come in contact with, have heard about it, have even shared about it themselves, not only the panelists and not only myself, but also the people watching out there. I'm sure you've shared something or read something. It's even been spoken about by our own leaders in the country. They've mentioned it, and we've seen minor protests as well, also in Kenya a few weeks back. So there's a lot of outrage about police brutality and all these racial inequalities, and all of these movements are being spearheaded by Generation Z, and it's just something that I want to know. Do you think the same can be reflected in our own country and Africa by and large? Do you think that we can also be at the forefront, maybe ideally speaking, outside our government offices and really screaming for this social change like it's being done in the US and in the Western world? What do you guys think? Do you think the same can be reflected? And we can continue on with Jeremy, and then from that we can go on to Tyler and Nora and then Andy.
Yeah, I think social change is something that can be instigated in the society, in the community. But I also think that one of the key aspects or key areas that we have to think, especially about us, the African concept, is that we also have to teach people how to instigate social change, how to ask the questions, how to take the initiative, how to see the problems and formulate ideas and ideologies about how to also provide a solution. Because I think I'm sad to say for a lot of us, our education process is not about how to identify solutions, but more or less how to regurgitate matter. Like, hey, this is what it's supposed to be. So I think for one of the key things that I think, yes, it can be taught, it's something that can happen. And we see that Africa is actually really, really ready and really ripe about such kinds of stuff. But I also think that there also needs to be a lot of training, a lot of also enlightening of people as to what it means, what social change is, and how can I be part of that whole big story to change the norms and culture of a society. Because I think we can be able to be or come to that place. And because what it's all about is just providing solutions to existing problems. Because like in Black Lives Matter, it's about providing solutions to racism and then structural flaws that actually promote racism in the country. So it's all about understanding the whole process of how do we align ourselves and also promote change. Yeah.
I definitely agree with what Jeremy says. I think that it's 100% possible for us as Africans and as Kenyans to also, I don't want to say jump on the same bandwagon, but like have a similar sense of like urgency and take responsibility for the problems that we see. But I think that, or what I've seen from the Black Lives Matter movement especially, is that they really care about what is going on. They really care about racism and they care about injustice. And I think that as Kenyans and as Africans, for us to be able to care to the same extent, we need to understand it. And I think that's where the problem lies. Like, I saw straight after the Black Lives Matter movement, which I think that's why it's so easy for us to jump on the Black Lives Matter movement and also support it. It's because the people who are there and who know more about it have explained it to us on social media in such clear ways that we're able to see the injustice very clearly, and then we're able to stand with what is right. But I think for us, it's kind of jaded. Like I saw on Twitter it was very soon after the most recent Black Lives Matter movement phenomenon. Like, someone started a Twitter thread talking about racism in a school in Kenya. And even though it looked a lot like racism, to me, it was very clear that it wasn't racism, but it was actually like socioeconomic inequality. You know, like someone was arguing about like them being Black in a British system school and them being bullied because of it. But I'm pretty sure that there were a lot of other Black students at that school who were not bullied. Like, it was more of a socioeconomic argument. And I think we also have a lot of like tribalism things that we don't discuss, you know? And so I think like those things definitely come in. Like, personally, how I see it, like when I see problems that even come up as like race here, it's first socioeconomic. People are more like rich and poor than they are Black and white, you know? Because in my experience, like a white person would not be, not that I've ever experienced racism in Kenya, but I think that a white person here, if they were going to be racist, would not be as racist to a Black person they consider to be the same as them in terms of like social, I don't know, social like acquaintance, than a Black person that they think, you know, they decide is less than them. Not saying that, you know, I don't know about people being racist here, but what I'm trying to say is I think our problem and the reason why certain things might not take off here is because we first don't understand what the actual problem is. And I think once we understand it and once we like think about it and have those hard discussions about tribalism, about why there's such a big socioeconomic gap and why we're okay with that, you know, then we'll be able to like have our own way of doing things and not necessarily see it as like, okay, so we get it, let's go on the streets and let's have protests. That could be a way, but is there a way that with our Kenyan culture, we can find another medium to make it more like, to make it work more for us, not necessarily like copy pasting what we see the West doing, because they figured out what works for them. And I think it's time that we figure out what works for us. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, so on society injustices, I would say it's very much possible. We have seen change. We have seen something that trended in Twitter, talked about, and actually there was an actual solution to it. For example, we remember the video of the woman being dragged by an OCS. Something was done to the police officer, so it really helped. However, what I would say is, as Kenyans, one thing we lack is consistency, especially as Generation Z. We don't have consistency. For the Black Lives Matter, there was a lot of consistency. I think it actually went for 2 or 3 weeks completely until it was being addressed. We lack that consistency. And mostly I feel it's because when there is something trending, when actually there's a social injustice that should be addressed, most of the time the intention behind the people tweeting is not the legit intention, especially as Generation Z. Sadly, we are known for being bribed to actually trend something. We are known for being used either by someone in political spheres or someone who's well endowed. So we really can, but we really first need to evaluate our intention. We really need to understand the issue, as Taylor stated, because most of the time when something is trending, people actually do not understand. And when in between what happens, it's not that the issue is trending because of how people really want to help, but it's trending because of the clashes that have come in between people. Some are supporting, others think not the right thing. So in between, the idea might have started global, but in between we lose the meaning. It actually now starts becoming like a war of words, a war of thoughts, a war of who knows better English than the other, and it loses the intentionality in between. And I also would still believe, how about if we tailor-made our issues? We can't come to Kenya and start saying, okay, we can, but how about in Kenya, colorism would be a better injustice than Black Lives Matter, because even in Kenya, we know that we have heard of white people, okay, light-skinned people are much preferred than the ladies are much preferred than the dark skin. So it's about tailor-made. You tailor-made or you tailor-make the social injustice to actually what's in our society. For example, gender-based violence, that might be not what is happening in another community, but if we actually learn to actually embrace the social injustices in our own society and tailor-make it to our own specification, to our own problems, to our own injustices, to the flaws in the law, to everything, without actually literally copy-pasting or borrowing from the outside countries, then we can really make an impact, followed by consistency. If we actually believe as Generation Z that this is the problem, we have the consistency. What is our intention? So yes, we can actually bring change using social media, but we really have a lot of aspects to really look to.
I totally agree with Tyler. One of the things is to understand the problems. And with that, we can now bring out the solutions to what we need in our generation, for instance. And unfortunately, that our generation has great ideas, but we don't know how to, or if I may say, we have the fear to voice up. Sometimes we look at it, and due to our cultural, we are told you're not allowed to tell your parent this, even if it's wrong. You still have to go back and be like, how do I say this? So with time, it tends to be a fear towards expressing ourselves towards the problem in our society. And through the Black Lives Matter, I learned that it's time for us to step up and educate our parents, to show them that even if I'm not right, I can tell you this and you can correct me slowly through it. I read a post saying, I need people to hear my voice. One of the posters had been put up by a youth. I need people to hear my voice. And I think Kenyans should now take it up to educate their parents that it's time for us to accept things. Things are changing. Technology is coming in. We're understanding the society. We need now to continue being consistent, as Nora said. We be consistent with what we want in our part and in correcting also the society at large.
I like that. I think one thing that I definitely got from all of your responses is that there's a lot of education that needs to happen within the generation for things to happen. And it seems that in light of recent things and recent movements, people are willing to learn because people are always sharing threads on Twitter. I've seen and willing to educate their following and their peers. And I've been actively doing that as well. And I know you guys have also participated, whether it be retweeting something where it's just somebody reading something about a particular issue. And I think education is very central to all of that. And as it was also mentioned, execution after that. So we will start the education and educating people also how to execute their concerns and their worries and all these things, right? So following on from that, this will be a bit of a challenge question, but I would like to know for you guys, what roles have you personally taken up? And if this question throws you off a bit and you're like, what roles have I taken up? That should then push you to then see and look to go and find more roles. And anyone watching out there, if that question makes you think, take a step back and think, then maybe that should also push you to go and really try and take up a role to see the change that you would like to see in Kenya. So yes, for my panelists, what roles have you guys taken up in to contribute to the social change that you would like to see in Kenya? And we can continue with Andy and then go up to Tyler, Jeremy, and then Nora after that.
Now that's a question that now throws me back. What have I done as Andy? I think change starts from home, and being that part is that now you can creating that basis with your parent to the point that you tell them your problems, which impacts you. And with time, you'll also realize they'll also share it with their friends. They'll be like, hey, my son said he's facing this and this problem. So it seems like they're all going through it at one point or the other. Even though it doesn't impact your child directly, it shows them that there's something that's affecting us. And I think that's what I've done towards society. I feel like I've not done that much.
That's a really good question, Tamara. And it definitely did throw me off as well. But I do agree with what Andy said. Like, you can only, I don't want to say you can only do so much, but you definitely just have to do your bit, whatever that may be, no matter how small it may be. If it's just like having a conversation with someone who maybe holds a view that is not correct, correct is a, neither here nor there, but like they hold a view that like could stand to be changed, or like you have information that they don't have and they just like they made a decision and they didn't have this information. So definitely having the courage to have those hard conversations, especially now that we're home and like, we're here. But I think that it's definitely something that I struggle with. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been trying to get off social media, but when I was on more frequently and I would spend like a few hours on my phone, like it would be a bit overwhelming because I see like all of these things that are going on, and sometimes it just feels like thing after thing after thing, and I'm like, okay, like how, like how can I help? And I know that with just going back to the Black Lives Matter movement, like I don't know if you guys saw some of the like posters that were like, this is what you can do. I don't know, you can call this governor, like in the US, like they had specific details about what people could do to get behind it. But it kind of is hard to do that for us here, So what I try to do is like, whenever, when I was online, like whenever I'd see like some form of injustice that's in Kenya, I'd try to repost it, but not just repost it, but if there's like a petition or like a GoFundMe, like I would just try to just do my bit, like no matter how small it may be. And also, like Andy said, like bringing up those conversations, like with my family members, especially with my parents or people who are older, who could, I don't know if they can, but maybe they could know what to do or know someone who could do, So just bringing it up and like hoping that, even if like what Andy said, they carry on that conversation with their friends or with people that they know. And the last thing that I've been doing, which I feel like is the only thing that I can consistently do, is actually pray about it. Like we say a lot, like pray for such and such and such, pray for, like it's a hashtag, but like, do you actually? So that's something that I've been trying to do as well. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, so one of the key things I'd like to also share about what I've been doing about social change. Maybe I can start highlighting maybe how social change works, because one of the key things is it starts with an individual. And I think we all heard that Michael Jackson song, I'm looking at the man in the mirror and I'm looking to change his ways. And I think that's where social change really starts with. It starts with me. And then as it starts with me, we're able to get a lot of people also who are thinking the same values or thinking the same things. Like, let's say I get another friend who's thinking the same as me, who's trying to see the change happening. And then from there, we can be able to think about now how can we influence an entire society? Because it's no longer me who's changed myself, but I have a friend who's changed and so on. So I think that's also the same concept of Christianity. It's not about the people, it starts with you. That, that's what God comes to save. He comes to save you. So how can you change? And as you change, that's able to influence someone else's life, and that's able to influence another person's life. And one of the key things I've also come to see in terms of social change and how people change, that there are roles that can actually be played. And there are, I think, around 9 roles that guys can fall into, and I think each and every one of us can identify with. There are guys who are called healers. These are the guys in social change who work with people who've been hurt by the norms of society, things that have actually broken people down. Like, let's say if it's things to do with tribalism, racism, some people are actually able to hear and be there with those people, being there with them, listening, and just like Tyler said, praying with them, such kinds of stuff. And then there are people who are called artists and storytellers. These are two kinds of groups. These are people who now talk about it, who share about it, like Andy has said about the posters and such kinds of stuff. There are people who now get into the concept of how can I visualize this pain? How can I communicate this pain in different forms? How can I tell stories about it? And I'm sure we all see that on social media. A lot of people telling stories about what happened, that this happened to me, so that people can actually be aware of this is actually something that's real. It's not just some fictional story, but this is something that's actually happened to someone. So we have such kinds of people, artists and storytellers, who make it real, who make you able to feel that this is actually something that's happening. Then we have guys who are called bridge builders, who are able to bridge together the gaps, because anytime there needs social change or there is social change, there is always two sides. There are always the guys who are for it, and there are always the guys who are against it. And so the bridge builders are guys who try to make sense of it all, to try and bring people together to actually see how this can actually be able to impact the society for the better of everyone, because that's what social change should be for, not just for me, but for each and every one of us who are in the society. And then we also have the caregivers, who are just like the healers, guys who help in terms of being there with others, supporting people, helping them out. And then we have guys who are disruptors. And these are the guys who usually are the first on the scene to make radical changes and radical things that has everyone wondering what just happened. What just happened here? So these are so the kinds of guys who just, literally perhaps are the first ones to go out and say that I'm not gonna do this. This is no longer going to happen here. Like I'd say, in terms of when we think about racism in America, the ladies who'd say, I'm not giving up my seat. Those are disruptors. Like, I'm not giving up my seat. This can no longer happen. Guys like Nelson Mandela, who are like, no longer will this happen. And then we have some guys like visionaries and builders. Now, visionaries are the guys who are able to see how will society change when this happens. What are some of the things that we can be able to see happen when these changes come in? The guys who are able to look into the future and be like, this is the future we want to see. And the builders are the guys who are able to now put in the force. Is it the structures that are needed to change? Is it policies that need to change? Is it such kinds of stuff? So personally for me, where I've found myself fitting in really well in terms of social change is visionary and being a builder. Because like we said, we're doing a lot of content development for kids, especially here in the African setting, because we're trying to work a lot and demystify a lot of these things. Because I know, especially in our Kenyan culture, for a lot of, like I'd say, because I work with boys, a lot with boys, you're telling them that, hey, for you to be a man, you have to be like this. For you to be a man, you have to have money. For you to be a man, you have to be dominant. You have to be the one who's beating down your wife and doing such kinds of stuff. And literally, we may not hear them per se, but these things are being passed on from generation to generation. That, this is how you're supposed to treat a woman. This is how you're supposed to be as a man. This is how you're supposed to be as a leader. So really working with kids and helping them understand that this is what it means to be a man. It's not about your force, your power, your money, your wallet. It's about your character. It's who you are. And when your character is able to be changed, man, you're able to get into the kitchen and cook. It's not, I have to wait for my wife. Even if she, if I come at 12 in the middle of the night, you will wake up and prepare ugali for me. No, it's not about that. No, it's about how can we create that kind of change. So I found myself really working, especially in the building aspect and also visionary aspect, trying to see how would society look like if this actually happened, if we actually had men who had this kind of character. If I would say the character of Christ, as he says in Ephesians, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. So trying to see how would that look like. So that's I'd say that's where I'm at, working on such kinds of things, visionary, looking at how can society be and building, putting in the structures to actually make that happen. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure where I range. Maybe at the end of this, Jeremy, you can tell me which I am. What has been my role in bringing social change? I'll start individually. I've stayed home, nimevaa mask, and kept all government directives towards ending COVID-19. I guess that's a good thing. I decided this is the stage where I get to learn and relearn all what I thought I knew. So basically, I took it up as a challenge to book myself on online courses on digital marketing. Google offers for free. I've been looking up on Tuyali on their education on women equality. I've been reading on, especially when we're in an era where feminism has really faced a lot of definitions. I've gone back in history and tried to really read what is this feminism? What did the people before me do? And where did we go wrong in the fourth wave of feminism? I've been trying to read on gender-based violence and actually trying to link it up with what's really happening in the community here. I've been trying to link up what I've studied with the practicality that happens in our society and what has happened during this COVID-19. I've been reading a lot of books, I would say so. But what I would say is I've been engaged a lot on conversations, especially on Twitter. During the month of May, we had the Mental Health Month, and I really took it upon myself to learn from the social media platforms. We had Mental Health Talk 254 on every Thursday, they're still there, where we got to really learn on different types of mental health, where can we help, how can one be a safe space as an individual and community-wise, and really how to be a better person and how to look up to the signs and symptoms of other people. So I've also been engaged on, Zoom meetings, on webinars on gender-based violence, on how economic empowerment as a say on everything. So really I've been having online conversations on the same, trying to learn because I realized there is so much out there that we don't really know. And so I've been trying to learn and actually passing on the information through online conversations with my friends and trying to really challenge them. Also trying to, as a person, trying to understand my own personality. Maybe I should link you up with a personality test that I did that actually even highlights your strengths and weaknesses, and you get to learn. Since I want to be a visionary, which are my strengths, and also trying to look at, since I want to do this and this in life, which are my weaknesses, how can I help to amplify my weaknesses to become strengths? How can I really use my weaknesses as a strength? And I would say also, I actually thought people cannot volunteer online, but actually some organizations allow volunteers online. And I've been engaged on volunteership, on trying to, draft conversations on sexual reproductive health, especially as Generation Z, where we have now teenage pregnancies and a high rate of abortions and other sexual reproductive health issues. So basically, I've always been challenging my fellow youth. It's about learning and relearning. And after you learn, how do you pass it on to the other people? So yeah, those have been the platforms I would say I've been engaged. So Jeremy, where do I fit?
I think perhaps what we can do is can have a chat afterwards. Then we can be able to give you the descriptions of what, because it's more or less like character, where you easily find yourself doing even without thinking. Because there's some people who generally drift towards helping people, just being there, listening to stories. Like you would say stories about gender-based violence. Like you just want to be with ladies who've gone through such kinds of things, and just walking with them and talking to them, listening to them. Those are kinds of like the healers and the caregivers. So maybe you can ask yourself, what do I really find interesting or easy for me that I really want to be able to participate in? Like, do I want to be there with them? Do I want to develop structures? Kind of these kinds of things. Yeah. So we can have a side chat and we can be able to talk more about that. Yeah.
Okay. Tyler and Andy, you're welcome. Tamara as well.
Thank you for that. And even anyone who's watching, if you would like Jeremy to tell you all about your character and which one you'd fit in, I personally would love to know as well. So I really like the fact that the first point that we started with is that change happens at home, and that's something that I think that's a lesson that has been really passed down and reflected in homes, in workplaces, that change always starts from home. I don't think one person can really start imposing change on other people if they can't, as Jeremy said, looked at the man in the mirror and said, where is my change, and what am I doing? What bit am I doing at home? And home can also be within you, not just with the people around you, also within you. Sometimes you need to look, especially right now as we have the time, you need to look inside and do a bit of introspecting and ask yourself, are my values aligned with what I'd like to see society to be in the future? Because I've had some tough discussions with some of my good friends where I asked them and I challenged them and asked them, are your values really what you'd like to see reflected out there? Because sometimes we end up seeing a lot of even that tribalism within ourselves and things like that. So as we're coming to the end, we've had a lot of lovely perspectives, and from our panelists, they've had really good opinions on things. But I also want to ask you, what roles do you think the older generation can take on in mentoring the growth and development of our Generation Z, Generation Z, for them to become what we would like to see in society? And so this is a challenge. This is something, a question where I'd like you to throw a challenge to our viewers and to our older generations, for example, for them to maybe take on more active roles. And maybe when you listen to each other speak, you can also challenge the people, the older generations within your life, to maybe say, wait, but you haven't mentored me to be this type of person. And I think also Nora mentioned it earlier, when in terms of greeting people, you hadn't taught me to have such customs. So what roles do you think the older generations can take on, and how can they actively participate in the mentoring of our generation? And we can start with Tyler and Andy and Jeremy, and then we can close with Nora.
Okay, so I think that I would say that definitely like the older generation has like value, and like we could stand to learn a lot from them. So what I would say is that the older generation can play a present but an open role to our generation. Present in the sense, like if you're in the older generation, whether you have kids or not, like, do you know someone who is our age? And like when I say no, not like, okay, yeah, I know their name and I know what they're doing. Like, do you know them? What are their interests? What are their passions? What type of things are they striving for? Who do they hang around? And like when you were their age, what type of things were you struggling with? How can you help them? How can you push them to be better? So present in that sense, like I think sometimes when people who are older, even people our age, think of mentorship, it's kind of like a top-down approach. Like, I'm just going to show you exactly how I did it, and then you should mimic it. You know, but we're different. Everyone is different, and times have changed, as we have definitely discussed that today. So, a present approach in terms of like actually being invested. Like, think. I know this might be hard, but just to encourage the older generation to try to think of whoever might be in our generation as like you're making a new friend, you know, like just get to know them, but be open in the sense of like if someone in our generation says something that you don't agree with or you wouldn't go that way, like don't shut it down. You know, like be open to exploring that idea with them, because like we've discussed, sometimes someone in the older generation might be like, you're always on your phone, why don't you go outside, why don't you, but like you're on your phone and you have an Insta shop and you are actually like you're doing things, you know, or even if you're running like a social justice movement, you're like coming up with posters and having these conversations online which actually make a change, you know. So like just be open to the fact that we probably will do things in a different way, but still be present, you know, because in a sense, I guess we are trailblazing this. I think people who are like still in Gen Z but are like 6 or 7, by the time they come up to where we're at, we'll probably have I don't want to say better advice, but maybe we might be able to help them more because we've been where they're at. But by and large, like for us, we don't necessarily have people who are like 2 times our age who know exactly what we're going through. So we're kind of like trailblazers in that sense with tech and all these things going on. So yeah, to just have a present. I would encourage the older generation to have a present but open approach, and just to think to yourself, like, all the things that you've been through in your life and all the things that you've learned, like, who are you leaving that to? Like, who gets to know about that? Who gets to know about how you were able to do it? And also just to focus more on, like, the principles as opposed to the way you did it. Like, was the principle to work hard? Was the principle to work in spite of you being afraid? And let that be the thing that you impart, and not to focus so much on, like, I guess, the technicalities of how our generation would rather do things. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
So for me, what I would say is, and I think it goes towards what Taylor is saying, is towards mentorship. For both we, the young and the old generation, we need to have mentors, both in what you want to do and on ways on how to impact the society. I think the best thing to be is, they say that unity is a strength, actually. So one of the things is to be united as both the young and the older generation, to be together towards attaining a certain goal. And that goal is easily achieved if you have a directive towards somebody and somebody is helping you, actually. And I think the right source to do it is through trust, and bringing up trust between you two. And at the end of it, it will be easier for you to work it out, because sometimes if you have something that you want to attain and you'll be like, hey, today I can't manage, somebody else can easily come and tell you, weren't you not supposed to do this and this and this? Let's go and do it together. So you have that strength to do something easily if you have a partner to do it, actually.
Yes, I think I also lean in to what Tyler and Andy have said. I've spoken about the whole issue of guidance and mentorship, and also the whole essence of accountability. That there's someone I can be accountable to. That, hey, let's say maybe I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to work this out to see how this works. Can I call you up? Can we have a meeting? Can we talk about this? Have candid conversations. Open conversations. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for, especially when it comes to the whole mentorship role. A lot of open conversations that, the feelings I'm feeling, that perhaps you also went through those kinds of things. It's not just about how greatly you did things, on how today, you always hear these jokes about, guys telling you how they became billionaires. I made this deal and then boom, I became a millionaire. But how can, literally have candid conversations? And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. Where did it hurt most? Where did you fall? What happened when you fell? What happened when you felt like this? What happened, when these kinds of things, when you encountered these kinds of challenges, how did you go through them? How did you go about them? And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. A lot of those kinds of open conversations, not just that, things magically happen, but hey, the relatability, I'd say that's what a lot of people are looking for. The open conversations that lean on towards relatability, that actually understand you, understand what you're feeling. I also was there. That when you have those kinds of feelings about failure, about fear, about all those kinds of things that you're going through, I was also your age, and I also felt that maybe perhaps times may be different, but I also went through that, and this is what I did. So I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. And I think that's what we really need, the kind of open, candid conversations, that are not battered with, things magically happen. And the whole aspect of relatability, that I get what you're feeling, I get what you're going through, because I was also there. I also felt these kinds of things.
Yeah, so I'll say, summarizing what everyone has said, is our older generation should be not only present, but should create an enabling environment. Because what I've realized is your parents might be present, but the environment that is the house, the aura that they emanate, you really don't want. You are not even in a position to approach them with your own issues. So I feel the environment that the older generation stays, the openness of the conversation should be something critical. Also, I would say in workplaces, especially since I'll be joining the other side, I read a book called Lean by Sheryl Sandberg, and she was stating that workplaces, organizations should have intentional mentorship. That is, you find most of the time, most females, you really want a male mentor, but because again of the social construct and maybe the meeting hours might be awkward, you really don't know how to approach. So you might either choose not to have a mentor or miss out on a good mentor who could have mentored you. So the solution was if the workplace, if organizations could have intentional mentorship, that is, maybe an organization could dedicate an hour or two one day to actually sit, to have a sit round, a round table conversation with the young people in the organization, that to actually as an older person, to actually take up one young person on your shoulders, not on your shoulders, under your wings, and to actually mentor them appropriately in the job place. So I believe the environment, also the university, have been there, and I would say the amount of mentorship there is minimal, either directly from the lecturers or the working staff. So I believe it's time the older generation actually realize this gap that we have been talking about. We have always been talking about the gap between the older generation and the younger generation. It actually can be eliminated by having mentorship, either intentionally or creating an enabling environment, all the way from school, from high school straight to the university, and actually in workplaces. Even I actually think even churches should actually start intentional mentorship to the young people, which should be open-ended, and the young people given a chance to actually choose which mentor, which person you feel speaks rightly to your path, and that would really feel most likely be helped with. Also, I would say mentorship. I believe there is this misconception that mentorship is actually it's a source of funds. As a young person and as Generation Z, I'll tell you no. Actually, all we want from you is a couch. We want just someone who will critique our ideas, and we want someone who can be a confidant to our ideas and the issues that we are going through. So it doesn't have always to be about the funds or something that you're putting your foot out. It can be just as simple as having someone to actually help us go through the stages of life. So yes.
Thank you so much to all my panelists. Like that was, I feel like that resonates a lot with me because that advice is going to be taken, and your advice and what roles you'd want to see the older generations take up. I think they should be challenged and positively challenged to take them up and really aid this generation in creating change, social change, and a lot of traction moving forward. And so that brings us to the end of this wonderful discussion. And I would just like to summarize because there's a lot of things that were discussed, and there's a lot of there's many points that were talked about and raised that I feel like we just need to summarize. And a comment actually that I would like to read by one of the viewers is that hashtag Generation Z, we can align ourselves to provide solutions to existing problems, understand, care, and take responsibility. This is a comment by Mutetia Agnes on Twitter. She was watching the live. So she believes, I feel like that's a supporter of Gen Z, saying that we can align ourselves and we can create positive change and moving forward. So I feel like from the start, we've mentioned our limitations and who we feel limits us, from ourselves to the people around us to the generation in itself, and certain misconceptions that we want to be dispelled. And one being that, a big one being that we are controlled by our technology and we're not doing much, we're just on our phones and we're lazy and we don't want to listen. Because as we've seen, as we've heard, Generation Z wants to be mentored. We want people to listen, and we want to also, we're willing to listen and to open up and listen to everything that the older generations can help us with. So another thing is that it's time to accept that we're doing things differently. And not only should that be accepted, but it should also be very celebrated. It's something that should be embraced by not only older generations, but also ourselves. We shouldn't want to then conform because we've really been butchered into thinking, gosh, this is, I'm a slave to this technology and I should try and move out from it. But really try and use that technology that you have been empowered with and continue to accept and develop your role through your capacity. So as I wrap up, I'd like to say thank you for everybody. Thank you to everybody who has tuned in. And also thank you for your wise words of of wisdom during the whole during the entire discussion. It was honestly lovely. Myself being younger than all of you, it's nice also for myself to learn and to listen from your experiences and your advice and your perspective. So thank you to the panelists, Jeremy, Tyler, Andy, and Nora again. And good luck in your future endeavors as a generation Zia. Yeah. So the panelists will stay behind after this, but just for final remarks. But thank you for everybody who has tuned in, and I hope you had a good time and I hope you enjoyed. Sorry, I was muted. The panelists, you guys can leave the call just because so that the live can end. Yeah.
Thanks, Tamara.
Sorry, I was muted. What?